The 13 principles that the Maimonides puts out that are the fundamental belief of every single Jew, how many of those are devoted to Mashiach? There's actually not one, but two of those beliefs, of those fundamental beliefs of any Jewish person, is that we believe in the coming of Mashiach. And so what we're going to try to do is talk a little bit about it and try to understand, what is this really? Now, I'm going to talk more about the era as opposed to the person. The era is the time of redemption. It's called in Hebrew Geula. Okay? Mashiach is the person, they say, he will usher in this era. So definitely it's significant and important, but we're going to talk here about what this means to the world and to each and every one of us. Now, it's interesting, if you look on your page number 5, figure 6.1, okay, you have two Hebrew words over there. Now, for those of you who are familiar, it tells you the English right underneath it. Gola means exile, and the word right next to it is Geula, which means redemption. Now, if you're looking at the Hebrew alphabet there, do you notice anything about the two words? Right? Yes, there are two words that are exact opposites, exile and redemption. Yet the words themselves are 100% similar, besides for one addition, the letter Aleph, Geula. Now, that is not insignificant, as anything in Judaism is never insignificant. And adding in the Aleph, and that's what the idea of what redemption really is. There isn't going to be this huge shift, this world turnover and big thunder and lightning and crashes and tornadoes or anything like that. There's not going to be suddenly we're going to fly and land up in, La La Land or Fairyland.
The dead or something going to come back to life, right?
So actually they say about Goleh and Geula that the world is going to stay the same. And in reality, the Aleph within the world, the essence, the beginning point of the entire world, is going to be allowed to express itself and to shine through and to really become the real reality. The Tanya explains, the Tanya is the basis of Hasidic philosophy that gives us really a lot of the Kabbalah, a lot of the essence of the Torah, and brings it to our very, very real way of understanding. But it explains that really, what is the essence of the entire world, right? God created the world it started off at some point. Everything that we see really, in its core and in its essence, there's divinity to it that's giving it life, that is allowing it to be in existence. We all have within us a soul. There are Jewish souls, there are Gentile souls, but in addition to people, animals have souls, and even inanimate objects have a spark of divinity that's giving it existence and that's giving it life. I have a chair, I have a table, the carpet, everything we see has something that's giving it life and giving it existence. At its core, everything is God. What's redemption? Redemption, however, what's happened is it's covered up by layers of what we see in this world, by physicality, that's obscuring the divinity within it. So we don't necessarily see goodness, we don't necessarily see divinity. Depending on how optimistic or pessimistic we might be, we can look at the world as very good, we can look at the world as very negative. Two people can see the same thing. One person can see the potential within, another person can just throw it out and disregard it, right? What will Geula bring? Geula will let us see the Aleph within everything. It will allow the godliness and the goodness that is inherent within everything be allowed to be expressed and revealed. We won't only see the facade, same thing with people, right? They say so much of Ahavat Yisrael, the core of loving every Jew, the basis of what Chabad Hasidism teaches and tells us about. Why is it? I could see somebody and say, oh, whatever, I don't necessarily, like the shirt they're wearing or whatever it is. But when we realize, and we get older and more mature, and we realize it's not about the shirt necessarily, right? I'm looking beyond the facade to realize, what kind of person is this really? So I want to see the goodness that's within this world. I'm going to see the potential, not necessarily just the reality. And sometimes all it takes is a shift in focus. If that person that you didn't like a minute before, for whatever reason it was, and you suddenly heard about them that they did A, B, C, or D, and they just gave away, they just helped somebody cover their mortgage so they don't get kicked out of their home or whatever it is, suddenly your perception of that person would shift right away. So we won't necessarily see the facades or see the physicality. We'll notice we'll notice the real goodness, and the goodness within everything will be inherent and will be obvious. That's the only difference between Golet and Geula. And it will be so much easier. If I struggle necessarily right now to do a mitzvah, if it's very difficult for me, but I suddenly realize how divine and what an impact I make in this world by doing a mitzvah, it won't be a struggle for me anymore. I won't have those layers and those barriers of physicality and, tempting me and pulling me in another direction, because the spirituality will be what's obvious within this world, and that will be allowed to shine through and shine forth. And that really, they say, was the vision of God when he first created the world, was that it should operate and act in this way. But not only with people, with everything in our lives. Judaism is very into stuff. If you look at Judaism, we have a mezuzah on the doors of our home, right? When I put a mezuzah on the door of my home, I am allowing the godliness within my home I'm allowing godliness within my home. I'm allowing this is not just a wall anymore. It's the wall of a Jewish home. It's a place where mitzvahs are taking place, where good things are being done. When I take a piece of paper and I'm printing a prayer book and I'm praying out of that prayer book, not only is my soul allowed expression, but actually the soul and the godliness within that object is being allowed to be expressed too. When I take a ram's horn and I turn it into a shofar, that ram's horn, the godliness within that becomes holy. When I'm eating kosher food or making a blessing on my food, that is becoming something holy and something great. We talked earlier today about tzedakah. When I'm giving tzedakah, not only is the money becoming something significant and the holiness that's inherent within the money being allowed to be expressed within the world, but actually all of the energy that I put into earning that money suddenly becomes something holy. So it's not just the 100 hours that I slaved away at work and was just working so hard and putting so much energy and effort into it and make this money, but suddenly I give a percentage of that money to tzedakah. All of that effort and energy that I thought, this is going to my job that I either hate or love, it suddenly becomes something special and holy. And I am allowing so much godliness and so much spirituality within this world. Let's go to text 5a. Now, somebody asked, what do we mean by reality? What do we suddenly mean that the world will become a new reality? Anybody ever had a dream here before? Yes?
I had a dream.
Anybody have really, as we know, in a dream, anything can happen, right? In a dream, my long dead grandmother can come to life, take me skiing and find a 3-legged chicken and we can just ski down on the grassy hills so smoothly and sailingly, and we can end up in our home and find a pot of gold in my basementless home, right? So anything can happen in a dream. A dream is not necessarily reality. It's not that this new reality is going to be a dream come true, but actually just the opposite. Everything will become so clear to us. Goodness and godliness will become so clear and obvious to us that I look back and I say, oh my gosh, the fact that people in Israel are being killed, that good people are being put through so much hardship, that it's so hard to earn a living, that I have to struggle so much in life or whatever it is, suddenly that's the dream. That doesn't make sense, because it will be, the goodness and the greatness will be so obvious to each and every one of us. Yeah.
So like in the priestly blessing, the section, it says, I had a dream, but I do not know what it is. And so I always find that text to be so profound, because, so is it just, is it sort of like referring to how the redemption, the Mashiach, is seeing the truth in what is around, or like our transcendental existence and everything like that, and our thoughts, it becomes clear?
It's not that suddenly everything in this world is going to be different. Blue chairs are going to turn into pink chairs, and the walls will change colors, and things won't be changing around us. But we'll be able to see that, oh my gosh, there's potential for greatness with this chair. There's potential with greatness with each and every person that I encounter. I'll be able to, we won't have that impulse to necessarily get upset at people or whatever it is, because we'll really understand and value everybody for who they are. So just naturally, everybody will want to be better people, and we will act better around them. Nobody will feel a need for any violence whatsoever anymore, because it's just the reality the shift in perspective will suddenly realize that, oh my gosh, godliness, goodness, following the Torah is so good and so it resonates so well, and anything negative, it's just like No, we won't even be pulled in that direction. As we know, in this world, there's spirituality and there's physicality, right? There's something that's very tangible that I can see and touch. And there's spirituality. At this point in time, I can't necessarily see it, and that's the greatness in being able to be in touch with it, even at a point that's now, because it's not so obvious, and I can go ahead and do a mitzvah and really let this godliness come into this world. Text 7 is something that's very, very interesting. It talks about the difference in this world that happened before Mount Sinai and after Mount Sinai. What do we mean here? It says in text 7, there's a parable. A king decreed, the Romans may not go down to Syria, and the Syrians may not go up to Rome. Similarly, when God created the world, he decreed, the heavens are the domain of God, and the earth he has given to the children of Adam. But when God sought to give the Torah, he nullified the original decree and said, those below may ascend above, and those above may ascend below. I don't know if we really appreciate what this medrash is really telling us. But what it's telling us is that before the giving of the Torah, there were two separate worlds. They weren't allowed to mix, mingle, or merge at all. There was spirituality, there was God and godliness, and there was this very, very physical world. When God gave us the Torah, he gave us this incredible, incredible gift. What was this gift? This gift was the ability to help make the world the perfect godly state that it was intended to be. How is that? As we said before, we were given the gift of being able to draw spirituality down into this world. With every object, with everything that we use in our lives for something good, with every good word that we say, with every good breath that we take, we are allowing spirituality to come down into this world. Now you may just think, okay, what's the big deal? But actually, it's very accumulative. And if you think about that, there have been generations and generations and generations of Jewish people before us that have been keeping kosher, that have put mezuzahs in their homes, that have written tefillin, that have printed and prayed out of prayer books, that have done so many great things, and that have been, of course, as we say, towards people in our ways of acting towards people, visiting the sick, Ahavat Yisrael, and so much more. With every action that they did that lived incredible, good, and godly lives, they brought spirituality into this world. And if you think of that as a cumulative, say, wow, so many Jewish people doing so many mitzvot over so many years, how much godliness can there be in this world? And the same thing I can say with myself. When I'm doing a mitzvah, I am helping to bring this world to its state that it's supposed to be. And some people can say, this is probably in 1,000 years or in 1,000,000 years. How is it going to be that Mashiach can be here? But actually, what the Rebbe was telling us is, if we look around the world as it is today, their world is actually operating on a much more peaceful level than it was ever meant to be. And that anybody would have seen. And if we look around the world, we see that the world is actually operating in a very, very redemption-like state. And how is that? I'm going to read, these are some recent events the Rebbe talks about in text 10. It might not sound so recent to us, but in the bigger picture of history, it's quite recent. There are those who are surprised at recent statements asserting that we are standing at the end of exile on the threshold of redemption. They ask, where do we see this? After all, the world continues to run as normal year after year. In truth, however, what is surprising is that these people do not contemplate current well-publicized events. What are these events? In the recent past, extreme and radical transformations have been transpiring around the world. Thanks to God's kindness, these upheavals are happening quietly. That is to say, without wars and bloodshed, heaven forbid, but through paths of diplomacy. These changes are so quiet and peaceful that daily life and regular routines continue unaffected, despite the extreme transformations taking place in the entire country. I don't know if any of you are able to guess ahead of time what it's talking about here, but some of them, it starts with Russia, the country which the previous Chabad Rebbe emigrated. For 70 years, there was a terrible regime that cast terror over everybody in the country. And suddenly now, there was a great change in the country, and it happened all very quietly, without a war. This would have been unheard of in the past. Never has there been. Napoleon didn't dream of taking over the world without war, without bloodshed. That's the way the world operated. But now it was in the past. In China, similar things, and in India, similar things. Unfortunately, right now, we are not lucky enough to see that in Israel. And unfortunately, that is a very, very, very sad state of exile. The fact that we cannot see, and the fact that there is anti-Semitism, unfortunately, That is one of the very, very sad facts and realities of exile. I'm going to skip a little bit ahead onto text 16. This is from Maimonides that we said when in his core principles of belief, he talks twice about redemption. Maimonides is explaining that during the Messianic era, there will be neither famine nor war, neither envy nor competition, for all that is good will flow in abundance, and all delights will be freely available as dust. The occupation of the entire world will be solely to know God. As it says, the world will be filled with the knowledge of God as the waters cover the ocean beds. It will just be natural to us to want to seek goodness, to want to spread goodness, and each and every one of us in this room can realize that nothing in my life is insignificant. No action of mine, no word of mine is considered insignificant. I might think, oh, it's just me, it's just a little thing, what's the big deal? But if we realize as the mission and as Jewish people, we know we have a responsibility not only to ourselves, not only to our families or to our communities, but our responsibility is to the entire world. And really our actions that we do make an effect and make a difference within the entire world. So that one little mitzvah that I was thinking, oh, what's the big deal? You know what? I don't necessarily realize what's happening with that mitzvah. That one little deed that I'm doing, I'm allowing the godliness to come into this world. I'm allowing the goodness within that object to be expressed. I'm allowing the goodness within me. I'm allowing myself to get in touch with my Jewish soul a little bit more. And I'm helping to bring this world to this incredible, incredible state of goodness and of perfection. And as we said and explained before, with no war, with no famine, with no negativity, we're only goodness, and really, which is what God intended for the world to be. And as we said, is a major cornerstone, a major foundation of all of Judaism, always. So this was, in short, in brief, but a little taste and a little something of what this idea is, how great the idea is, and how I am not insignificant in this greater picture.
Click subscribe to see more exclusive content for the most sought-after Jewish speakers, teachers, and thinkers.